Have you ever wondered why some people crumble at the slightest inconvenience, while others stay ice cold even when the world is falling apart? Today, we're talking about how to build that same kind of bulletproof armor. We're diving into why Stoics never feel fear, and we'll break down 8 specific rules from this incredible philosophy. I promise you, by the end of this video, you'll have practical tools that will permanently change how you respond to stress and scary situations. Now consider this paradox. The most fearless people in history weren't actually emotionless. They just knew how to channel those emotions correctly. In this video, I'm going to reveal an overlooked truth, that fear is nothing more than an illusion your brain creates out of habit. We've been conditioned to think that being afraid is just normal. But what if I told you that fear is actually a choice? Tell me in the comments right now, do you agree that we choose our own fears, or are you ready to challenge me on that? Let's get into it. To understand how this mechanism works, we need to look back at history. Stoicism began in ancient Greece over 2,000 years ago, but it truly hit its stride in ancient Rome. This wasn't a philosophy for ivory tower academics. It was a practical survival guide for a very brutal world. Imagine that era. Wars, plagues, constant betrayals. Losing your fortune or even your life was a daily possibility. In those conditions, keeping a clear head was a matter of life and death. The heroes of this school of thought came from completely different worlds. There was Epictetus, who spent half his life as a slave. Seneca, a brilliant politician and millionaire who lost everything. And Marcus Aurelius, the emperor who governed a massive empire in the midst of non-stop warfare. They all had one thing in common. They developed a system of rules that made them invulnerable to the strikes of fate. They couldn't control the chaotic world around them, but they achieved absolute control over what happened inside their own minds. Let's start at the very beginning. The most fundamental rule of Stoicism is remarkably simple. It's called the dichotomy of control. Imagine a thick line dividing the entire world into 2 parts. On one side is everything you can control. On the other, everything else. Here is the key. Fear only ever lives in that second zone. We fear the things we cannot influence, the economy, illness, or what other people think of us. The Stoics realized something brilliant. Wasting energy on things outside your control is like trying to stop a hurricane with your bare hands. You'll only exhaust yourself and fall into despair. And despair is where panic begins. The first step toward fearlessness is to draw that line clearly in your mind. Whenever you feel fear creeping in, ask yourself one simple question. Is this situation under my absolute control? If the answer is no, you must consciously let it go. Your mind should be reserved only for what truly belongs to you, your own actions, your own thoughts, and your own choices. Let's look at a perfect example of how the first rule plays out in modern life. Imagine you're running late for a high-stakes meeting, the kind your entire career depends on. Suddenly, you hit total gridlock. A typical person would start to spiral. They'd honk their horn, curse at other drivers, and break into a cold sweat, catastrophizing about getting fired. Their heart races, their stress levels go off the charts, and they're consumed by dread. Now let's look at that same situation through the eyes of a Stoic. A Stoic understands that the traffic is completely outside their control. They can't make the cars fly, and they can't turn back the clock, so they simply stop worrying about it. Instead, they focus on what they can do right now. They can call ahead to give a heads up. They can use the time to listen to an insightful audiobook, or they can simply focus on their breathing. The situation is exactly the same. But while one person is drowning in a sea of panic, the other remains in a state of absolute calm. It's important to clear up a common misconception right from the start. Many people picture Stoics as cold, unfeeling robots who simply don't care about anything. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Stoicism isn't about indifference, it's about the wise management of your energy. Living without fear doesn't mean you stop caring about the outcome. You might be deeply committed to landing a great job or protecting your family, and you should put in every ounce of effort to make that happen. However, the key is not to anchor your happiness to the final result, because in reality, the outcome is often out of our hands. True wisdom lies in doing everything within your power to the highest standard, and then simply accepting whatever follows. The moment you stop demanding guarantees from the universe, your fear vanishes. You're no longer afraid of failure because you know your self-worth is rooted in your own efforts, not the whims of luck. It's an incredibly liberating feeling, and it's exactly where true inner strength comes from. Now let's move on to the second rule. It's called negative visualization, or in Latin, premeditatio malorum. It might sound a bit intimidating, but it's actually one of the most powerful tools for overcoming fear. Most modern success gurus tell us to focus only on the positive, to visualize wealth and achievement. The Stoics did the exact opposite. They made it a point to regularly imagine the absolute worst-case scenarios. They mentally put themselves in situations most people are afraid to even think about, losing their possessions, being betrayed by friends, or facing illness and exile. Why would they do this? Were they trying to be depressing? No. They did it to strip fear of its greatest weapon, the element of surprise. Fear feeds on uncertainty. When disaster catches us off guard, we panic. But if you've already rehearsed the scenario in your mind, you already know how you're going to act. You've already processed the shock in the safety of your own thoughts, and when trouble finally does come, you're ready to meet it with a smile. Let's look at a modern-day example of negative visualization. Imagine you are terrified of public speaking. You have a major presentation coming up, and the mere thought of it makes your knees shake. How do you apply this Stoic principle? Sit in silence and visualize the absolute worst-case scenario. Imagine yourself standing on stage and completely blanking on your lines. Picture the microphone cutting out or the projector failing. Imagine someone in the audience yawning loudly or even laughing at you. Truly live through that moment in your mind. Then ask yourself, will this kill me? Will it actually ruin my life forever? You'll realize the answer is a resounding no. You'll see that even if you fail spectacularly, you will still go home, have dinner, and go to sleep. The world will not end. Once your brain realizes that the worst-case scenario is survivable, it stops treating the presentation like a life or death threat. The fear dissolves, leaving room for focus and calm preparation. You become unshakable. But what's the real meaning behind the third rule? It's the concept of loving your fate, the famous Latin phrase, amor fati. This isn't just about gritting your teeth and enduring hardship. It's an active, joyful embrace of everything that happens to you. The Stoics believe the universe follows a rational order. Even if we don't understand the reason behind an event, it is woven into the vast tapestry of destiny. Fighting against reality is the quickest path to pain and fear. When we cry out, "Why me?" we only multiply our suffering. Amor fati means taking any event, even the most difficult, and saying, "Okay, this was meant to be. This is my chance to grow stronger." You don't just tolerate the pain, you use it as fuel for your development. Think of a roaring fire. If you throw an obstacle into it, the fire doesn't go out. It consumes that obstacle and burns even brighter. That is exactly how the mind of a true Stoic works. It transforms the blows of fate into stepping stones for growth. Let me share a vivid example for this section. Imagine you've just been suddenly fired from the job you considered your life's work. The natural reaction is fear, despair, and resentment toward your boss. You keep playing back how unfair it is, worrying about the loss of status and financial security. But someone who practices love of fate sees it differently. They tell themselves, "Great, this just shattered my comfort zone. That means it's time for something better." Maybe this is the exact push you needed to start your own business or finally switch to the career you've always dreamed of. Instead of a catastrophe, you see a challenge, a difficult but exciting one. The fear fades away because you stop clinging to the past. You accept the new rules of the game with curiosity and gratitude. Embracing your fate transforms you from a victim of circumstance into the architect of your own life. This brings us to another myth that needs debunking. Many people confuse the idea of loving one's fate with passivity or fatalism. They imagine a Stoic just sitting idly by, letting life kick them around while muttering, "Well, I guess this is just how it's meant to be." That couldn't be further from the truth. A Stoic is actually incredibly proactive. The only difference is where they choose to direct their energy. If a pipe bursts in your house, loving your fate doesn't mean sitting on the couch with a smile while the water floods the room. It means you don't waste a single second on hysterics, screaming, or cursing the plumber. You instantly accept the reality. The pipe is broken. It has already happened. It is now part of your story for today. So you calmly grab your tools, shut off the water, and start the repair. By stripping away any emotional resistance to the facts, you're able to act with maximum speed and efficiency. You don't lose time to anger or fear. You go straight to the solution. The fourth rule of Stoicism is about seeing the world with objective clarity. It's a technique often called stripping things bare, removing the labels and stories we instinctively attach to everything around us. Most of our fear doesn't come from events themselves, but from the meaning we choose to give them. Marcus Aurelius famously reminded himself that expensive wine is nothing more than fermented grape juice, and his royal purple robe was just sheep's wool stained with the blood of a shellfish. When you strip away the prestige, the glamour, or the intimidating reputation, things become what they truly are: simple physical objects or plain facts. Our minds love to make mountains out of molehills, tagging everyday setbacks as disasters or the end of the world. The Stoics taught us to deconstruct these situations into their simplest, most mundane components. When you view a thing exactly as it is, without the drama or the imagination, it loses its power over you. Fear simply dissolves in the clarity of logic. Let's put the fourth rule into practice. What is it that most people truly fear? For many, it's the thought of poverty. The mere idea of losing everything can leave a person in a cold sweat. But let's look past the labels. What is poverty, really? It isn't some monster lurking in the shadows. It is simply a change in lifestyle. It means eating plain oats instead of an expensive steak. It means swapping a designer wardrobe for basic, simple clothes. It means taking the bus instead of a taxi. That's all it is. Seneca, one of the wealthiest men in Rome, would spend several days every month living in intentional poverty. He wore rough clothing and ate nothing but stale bread. During those days, he would ask himself, "Is this the condition I was so afraid of?" He realized that a simple life is perfectly fine. There is nothing fatal about it. When you break your fears down into these small, practical pieces, you realize there is nothing to be afraid of. The human body can endure almost anything, as long as the mind remains calm. Rule number 5 is the view from above. It's a powerful technique for shifting your perspective. When we are gripped by fear or anxiety, our focus narrows. The problem starts to feel massive, as if it fills our entire world. The Stoics suggested a different approach. Mentally rising above the situation. Imagine yourself soaring high above your city. You see your house and you see your tiny self down there, stressed over something trivial. Now go even higher. Take in the entire country, then the whole continent. Look down at the earth from deep space, a pale blue dot adrift in the infinite void of the universe. Now add the dimension of time. Think of the millennia of history and the great civilizations that rose and vanished. From this cosmic vantage point, our problems, fears and grudges become incredibly small, almost insignificant. This shift in scale instantly humbles the ego and soothes the nervous system. Here's how the view from above technique works in practice. Imagine a massive blowout at the office. Your boss is screaming at you right in front of all your colleagues. You feel a surge of shame and terror, convinced your reputation is ruined. To you, it feels like the end of the world. But now, zoom out. Mentally rise up toward the stars and look back down at that office building. In one of those tiny rooms, 2 small biological organisms are making noises at each other. Surrounding them is a vast planet where billions of other people are busy with their own lives. Somewhere it's raining, somewhere else, volcanoes are erupting. To those billions of people, what's happening in your office doesn't matter one bit. In 100 years, you'll be gone. Your boss will be gone. That building won't even exist. No one will remember any of this. So, why waste your precious peace of mind on something so microscopic in the grand scheme of the universe? Embracing your own insignificance, in the best possible sense, grants you incredible freedom. It completely dissolves the fear of what others think. The sixth rule is perhaps the most famous. Remember that you must die. Memento mori. To many, the constant thought of death feels morbid. Our society tends to avoid the subject, acting as if we'll live forever. But for the Stoics, the awareness of mortality was the ultimate cure for fear. Marcus Aurelius famously wrote that we should approach every act as if it were the last of our lives. The realization that our time is strictly limited changes everything. When you accept that you could leave this world at any moment, petty anxieties lose their power. The fear of rejection, the fear of failure, the fear of looking foolish, it all burns away in the light of the end. When you let death be your guide, life becomes crystal clear. You stop procrastinating. You stop fearing change, because you realize that the most inevitable thing of all will happen to everyone, sooner or later. Let's put this rule into perspective. Most people live their lives paralyzed by the opinions of others. They're afraid to start a blog, scared to approach someone they find attractive, or too intimidated to ask for the raise they deserve. They waste years hiding in the shadows, scrolling through social media, simply because they're terrified of taking a real step forward. But now, apply the principle of memento mori. Imagine you only have 6 months left to live. In that moment, would you really care what some anonymous stranger on the internet thinks of your video? Would you still be too nervous to walk up and just say, "Hello"? Of course not. That fear would vanish instantly. You'd realize that the only thing truly worth fearing is wasting your one and only life, living in the shadow of other people's expectations. Remembering your mortality isn't a depressing thought, it's a wake-up call. It snaps you out of your trance and forces you to act with courage, right here and right now, without ever looking back at fears that were never real in the first place. It's time to debunk another myth, the idea that contemplating death robs life of its joy. In reality, it's exactly the opposite. Someone who runs from the thought of death lives in a state of constant subconscious tension, desperately clinging to things they are destined to lose anyway. But a Stoic who has accepted their mortality is able to truly appreciate every single day. They savour their morning coffee, knowing this morning was never guaranteed. They hold their loved ones a little tighter because they know that time is finite. Memento mori transforms the mundane into a vivid, priceless adventure. When you stop fearing the final curtain, every obstacle along the way becomes nothing more than a thrilling challenge. You begin to play the game of life with boldness and grit, because in the end, there is absolutely nothing to lose. That is the ultimate form of psychological invincibility. The seventh rule of Stoicism is all about staying grounded in the present moment. The philosopher Seneca famously said that we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Think about it. Where do the vast majority of your fears actually live? They live in the future, a place that doesn't even exist yet. We constantly let our minds time travel, dreaming up worst-case scenarios for tomorrow, next week, or a year from now. Our bodies then react to these fantasies as if they were happening right here, right now. Your adrenaline spikes, your heart races, and you end up wearing out your nervous system over nothing but illusions. The Stoics trained themselves to constantly pull their attention back to the here and now. They would tell themselves, right now, in this very second, I am safe. Right now, I am simply sitting here, breathing. The future isn't here yet, and when it does arrive, you will have the strength to handle it. Mastering your attention is the ultimate key to mastering your fear. Let's look at a practical example of the seventh rule. Imagine you've just gone for medical tests and the results won't be ready for another 3 days. Those 3 days can easily become a living hell. Your mind starts racing, coming up with the worst-case scenarios. You can't sleep, you can't work, you're completely paralyzed by fear. But what is the reality of the situation? At this very moment, you are at home. Your physical condition hasn't changed just because there are samples sitting in a lab somewhere. It isn't an illness that's causing your distress. It's your thoughts about it. This is when you must apply the rule of the present. Tell yourself, I have no control over the results right now. I can only take action once I have the facts. But tonight, I can control what movie I watch and how I spend time with my family. Make a conscious effort to bring your focus back to the task at hand. Wash the dishes, walk the dog, or read a book. Every time your brain tries to run off into a frightening future, gently but firmly pull it back to the here and now. Finally, the 8th rule. It reminds us that virtue and courage aren't innate gifts. They are habits built through action. The Stoics believed that philosophical knowledge is worthless if you don't put it into practice. You can't simply read your way out of fear. True courage is forged only when you consciously step toward the things that scare you. Every time you do what is right, even when your knees are shaking, you strengthen your inner core. Fear doesn't disappear with a snap of your fingers. It retreats, step by step, under the weight of your actions. You must train your mind just as an athlete trains their muscles in the gym. Start small. Do the little things that make you uncomfortable. With every small victory, you are signaling to your brain that you are stronger than your circumstances. Gradually, fear will lose its grip on you. Here's a perfect example of how to build true courage. Imagine you have a boss or a colleague who is constantly aggressive and rude. Usually, your fear of conflict keeps you silent. You're afraid that speaking up will only make things worse. But Stoicism demands a different approach. It calls for calm, courageous action. You don't need to start a fight or have a breakdown. Your task is to simply say, firmly and without emotion, "Please don't speak to me in that tone. I need you to lower your voice." Your heart will be pounding. You'll be terrified to even open your mouth. But remember, you aren't doing this for the external result. You're doing it to forge your own character. Even if they get angrier, you've already won. You didn't break. You acted like a free person. Once you do this once, it becomes much easier the second time. Courage becomes your new normal. Fear fades away, leaving only self-respect and true dignity in its place. So, let's bring these 8 principles together. As we've seen, Stoicism isn't just a collection of dry, theoretical lectures. It's a powerful form of psychological armour. The dichotomy of control cuts away unnecessary worry. Negative visualization prepares you for any blow. Loving your fate turns obstacles into opportunities. An objective perspective shatters fearful illusions. A cosmic view makes our troubles feel insignificant. Remembering your mortality inspires you to live boldly. Focusing on the present silences anxiety about the future. And constant practice turns these principles into a way of life. By applying these tools every day, you build an invisible yet impenetrable shield around yourself. Life will keep happening. People will make mistakes, economies will falter, and challenges will cross your path. But within you, there will always be a quiet, unshakable fortress of calm. You will become the master of your own response. Think back to the most defining moments of your life. Now you're about to realize the ultimate secret. Fear isn't some external threat lurking in the shadows. It's an illusion, a product of your own mind. And here's the greatest plot twist. The prison you think you're in was never actually locked. You've been holding the keys the entire time. By applying the wisdom of the ancient Stoics, you can walk out of that cell whenever you choose, realizing that you, and only you, decide how to react to anything the world throws at you is the ultimate form of mastery over your own life. You are no longer a victim of circumstance. You are the captain of your ship. To wrap things up, remember this golden rule. Control what you can, accept what you cannot, and never forget that your inner will is stronger than any external pressure. Thank you so much for watching until the end. I truly hope these 8 principles help you find more freedom and peace of mind. If this philosophy resonates with you, please subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these 8 Stoic rules feels the hardest to apply in the real world? Let's dive into your stories and thoughts in the comments below.